Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to be doing my best case scenario election prediction, DeSantis versus Biden. So, 2024 election, best case scenario, everything goes right for Republicans and DeSantis is on the ticket. Let's see how that would go. So, I'll start out with the safe states. Everybody knows these by now. This is nothing new. Well, except for Georgia there. Well, a little bit of it will change. So there are a few states that will likely be safe as a result of this being a best case scenario prediction. Texas and Florida are the two that I think would be safe. So Florida being DeSantis' home state, he's popular there. The state itself has been trending to the right, especially with DeSantis. He's managed to push the state further to the right, and overall, there's a lot of Republicans moving there and settling in the state, which has pushed the state as well. And another thing to consider is the trends of the Cuban voters in the Miami area, the Miami part of the state. They are also trending more to the right. They're voting more and more Republican as they see the radical ideology that's coming out of the current Democrat Party. And then, again, if trends continue, especially in the southern part of the state of Texas, the Mexican Latino voters there that are voting more and more Republican, the state itself will probably trend back into a safe column. And as well, the Democrats are pretty much maxed out in the suburbs. But another thing to consider, best case scenario, Republicans would be able to gain in the suburbs. They'd overall increase their margins in most parts of this country. So if they can improve in the suburbs, even a reasonable amount, they don't have to win them, but if they can get good enough margins in the suburbs, they can pick up, get close in some, like they don't have to win them all, but they can very well increase leads in certain states and potentially win states they would not otherwise win. So I do think DeSantis would be able to increase his overall the Republican margin in the suburban parts of states. Now, we'll do the safe Democrat states, that being California, Washington, Illinois, New York, DC, Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Vermont, as well as Hawaii. So this will look a little different. Some people might disagree a little bit with my characterization of some of these states, but we'll speak about each of those once we get to them. Moving on, we will do the state of Georgia. I think the state of Georgia will be a likely Republican in this scenario. Again, if the suburbs can kind of start to max out and go back in favor of Republicans, I do think Georgia, because it is a highly suburban state, they would be able to win the state. I think DeSantis would win. I think he'd win it regardless, but in best case scenario, he would be able to get the margins to get it into a likely column again. Not only that, the state itself, although is trending to the left in some regards, it seems to have done a sort of reverse trend, at least in the short term, with Herschel Walker and Brian Kemp both leading in their polling and likely winning by both likely to potentially safe margins in their races. So respectively, they will be pushing the state at least a little bit back to the right, but long term, the state will probably trend to the left. But moving on, we also have Wisconsin, which I think would be likely in this scenario as well. The state itself is trending to the right. The entire Rust Belt itself is trending to the right. Even Illinois and parts of New York, they seem to be a little more right-wing. They voted more Republican. They haven't voted Republican, but more Republican than they had in the past with Trump running. His more populist ideology has helped a lot in the suburban areas of the state and the more average working class type family. So DeSantis would be able to get those kinds of voters out and would be able to energize them enough to win an election there. Another state that I do think would be likely in the scenario would be Pennsylvania. The state itself, similar in some regards to Wisconsin, at least being the Rust Belt type state, the working class vote, the more populist policies working there, that's what's popular. The state is also trending to the right, like Wisconsin. I'd say faster in some ways as well. Voter registration has been favoring Republicans there. So I do think Pennsylvania would be a likely state in this case. Now, another likely state, I think Arizona would be likely as well. They would reverse their trend from the 2020 election, and they would be likely for Republicans as well. I think Kerry Lake, Blake Masters both running there, that will push and aim to push the state further to the right and overall make the state truly a great state. It'll become better than it ever has, and it will have great leadership and politicians. So, moving on, we're done all of the likely states for the Republicans, at least for now. We have likely for the Democrats, Oregon. Now, Oregon, that one's a little controversial, but I do think it's possible it could fall into a likely margin in best case scenario for the Republican candidate, for Ron DeSantis. I do think it's very possible, especially with the chance that potentially a Republican governor could win there because they're splitting the vote there. Yes, the split vote won't happen there in the actual federal election, but it doesn't mean the state isn't potentially capable of getting a little closer. Now, we also have the state of New Jersey. I think in this case, it probably would go in a likely column just barely. It'd be close. Actually, I'd say the same with Delaware. The state itself is also potentially capable of going into that margin, and Rhode Island as well. The state has trended very fast to the right. Actually, it's not a conservative state by any means. It's still Democrat, and it was still a safe Democrat. But in the last 10 years, it has trended about 16 points to the right, I believe, if I'm correct in my recollection of the polling trends and the trends of voting in the state. So it is possible it could get closer. Now, moving on to the lean states, we have Michigan. Michigan would be lean. The state is, again, trending to the right like the rest of the Rust Belt. And I do think Nevada would be probably lean in this scenario as well as Nebraska's 2nd district. Now, this will be a little different too, but I think Maine at large would be in probably a lean margin for the Republicans in this case. Trump got close in 2016, a little less close in 2020. Again, that was more or less a favorable environment for Democrats. COVID really killed Trump's ability to win the election, you know what I mean. But overall, I do think he'd be able to get Maine at large. Now, DeSantis would also be able to get Minnesota, I think, in this case, in a lean margin as well. That one, it's been a long time since the states voted Republican, but I do think it would happen in this case, as well as New Hampshire and the state of New Mexico. So, yes, unlikely, but I do think it's possible. Again, you have to remember this is a best case scenario. Now, Democrats, Biden, I don't think he's going to be able to get Virginia, but I do think DeSantis gets it. Again, the suburban increase will help a lot in the state. It currently has a Republican governor in Glenn Youngkin. He's been a decent governor. He's decently popular. If they can campaign on good policy, that is very possible that they could flip the state in a tilt margin. And I think the same would happen with Colorado. Now, Colorado, I could see going either way in this case. Colorado is a state that has trended very, very, very quickly to the left. Like you could put it either way. It could go either, but I'm going to put it in the Republican column. I'm going to give it to DeSantis because, again, this is best case scenario. It is very possible that this state could potentially flip for DeSantis. Unlikely, but possible. Anyways, guys, that is my 2024 best case scenario prediction for Ron DeSantis if he were to run and everything went perfectly for him. If you enjoyed that video, please consider leaving a like, leave a comment down below as well, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Anyways, that's all for now. Hope you guys have a good night.